Hi, I hope you all are doing really well. This is Ritika and we are doing reading 30th of corporate issuers called Cost of Capital. We are now on LOSF and LOSF requires us to explain and demonstrate beta estimation for public companies, thinly traded public companies and non-public companies. First, we'll begin with the beta estimation for publicly traded companies. But before we begin, what is beta? Beta is a measure of systematic risk of a company or a project. And the systematic risks are those risks that cannot be eliminated despite any efforts. So then how do we calculate beta? Typically, beta is calculated or estimated using regression analysis. It is calculated by taking historical returns on a company's stock and regressing it over the market returns. We use this regression equation to do the same. In this equation, this term represents the return that the company is expected to earn. And this depends on three factors: a constant, a beta, and expected market returns. So this A constant is the return that the security in question will earn even when the market returns are zero. However, the returns may be negative if the market returns are negative. This beta here is the slope of the regression line, the one that we draw on the graph when we plot the same. And RMT is the expected return on market, and this is also a variable. This term here is the estimate of beta coefficient. It is sensitive to or depends on three factors. The first one is the length of estimation period. Higher the estimation period, lesser is the richness of data, and thus the value of beta estimated. Then second factor is periodicity within the period. Smaller the interval of each period used, the lesser is the standard error in the estimated beta. Then third, the selection of an appropriate market index, that is RMT, also affects the value of beta. Then the fourth factor is the use of smoothing technique and the adjustment for small cap stocks. Now, as mentioned, beta is the measure of a systematic risk. It is mainly affected by business risk and financial risk. The business risk of a company is mainly caused by two things. One is the uncertainty of revenues, also referred to as sales risk, which in turn is impacted by three things: elasticity of demand, its cyclicality, and the industry structure. Then the other factor that impacts the business risk is operating risk. The financing risk, on the other hand, is the risk of inability of the company to service its debt obligation. It is dependent on the level of debts. Now, another important thing about this beta that we calculated using regression analysis is that it is raw or unadjusted, and it needs to be adjusted because it tends to move towards the value 1 in the long run. When the value of beta is 1, it would mean that the expected return on equity would be exactly equal to the market expected return, which of course may not be the case. So we gotta readjust the beta. The adjusted beta is an estimate of securities' future beta. It uses the historical data of the stock but assumes that a security's beta moves towards the market average over time. It weighs the historic raw beta and the market beta, and the formula for doing the same is this. So the adjusted beta is 2/3 of raw beta plus 1/3 of long run beta, which is 1. Now moving on to estimating beta for thinly traded and non-public companies. And how do we do it? We use the Pureplay method. The Pureplay method involves using a comparable publicly traded company's beta and adjusting for the financial leverage differences. The company that you select for comparison should have a similar business risk as to the project. It's obviously not possible to get a 100% match. There may be differences in the level of financial risk, but we can always adjust for the differences. While analyzing the returns on a project, we are concerned with the beta of the project. And if the comparable beta is unleveraged, the one that does not have the elements of debt, then we adjust the same by re-levering to reflect the capital structure of the project. So we basically add the impact of debt to the unlevered beta. So the beta of the project or the beta of the asset is this. Here we multiply the beta of each component of capital, that is debt and equity, with their respective weights and add them. Now in this equation, we have weights of debt and equity. And we can rewrite the weight of debt as total value of debt divided by total value of debt plus total value of equity. That is total value of capital. And similarly, we can rewrite the weight of equity as total value of equity divided by the total value of capital required for the project. So if we replace the value of weights in the above equation with these value of weights of debt and equity, we can rewrite our equation like this. Now to this equation, we can also include the impact of taxes on the debt of the company. And if we do that, we get this equation. So what we've done is, we multiplied the debt by 1 minus tax, as we had done earlier. Why? Because debt is tax deductible and the amount of interest that we pay reduces the tax obligation. So we have multiplied D everywhere with 1 minus T. And this equation is also known as Hamada's equation. And while writing the Hamada's equation, we make an assumption that beta of the debt equals 0. And why do we make such an assumption? We assume that the debt has negligible risk and all the interest and payments on it would be made as and when they fall due. So now that this term in the equation becomes 0, we can rewrite Hamada's equation like this. Now if we divide both the numerator and denominator by E, we get this. And when we solve this, we get this equation for comparable unleveraged beta. And we can rewrite this equation like this. Here, value of leveraged beta equals the unleveraged beta multiplied by 1 minus T times debt over equity plus 1. And this equation also shows that if the taxes weren't there, the presence of debt would have made the asset even more riskier due to presence of financial risk. And we get this graph if we present this equation graphically. In this graph, the level of risk till the time the debt is equal to 0 represents the premium for business risk, as there is no leverage till that time. But as the amount of leverage increases, the increase in the amount of risk that follows represent the premium for financial risk. So to sum up, we can say that the Pureplay method of estimating beta involves these steps. Select a comparable, estimate comparables beta, unlever the comparables beta, and then lever back the beta for project's financial risk. Now let's do a question for revision. An analyst gathered the following information about a private company and its publicly traded competitor. Now, since the public company is a competitor, we'll assume that it is a comparable company. So we have tax rate, debt equity ratio, equity beta of both the companies. And now, using the Pureplay method, the estimated equity beta for the private company is closest to option A 1.029, option B 1.104 or option C 1.877. So now using the levered beta of the public company, we'll find the value of the unlevered beta. We'll use this equation to do the same. We have 1.75, that is levered beta, multiplied by 1 divided by 1 minus 0.35, that is the tax rate, multiplied by 0.90, that is the debt equity ratio, plus 1. So the unlevered beta is 1.1041. Now we'll use the unlevered beta of the comparable company to find the value of levered beta of the private company. We do this using this equation. So we put the values. 1.1041 multiplied by 1 minus 0.30 times 1 plus 1. And the answer is 1.87697. So option C is correct. Let's do one more question. Which of the following processes is most likely to be applied to an asset beta to reflect the effect of financial leverage when estimating the beta of a non-public company? A. Adjusted beta. This is incorrect because it is done to correct the tendency of raw beta to move towards the value of 1. Then option B. Relevering. This is the correct option. And C. Unlevering. No, this is done to eliminate the comparable company's financial leverage from its beta to reflect the systematic risk. So the correct option is option B. That was LOS F. Check out ProCFA.com for questions and study material, and if you have any problem, write to us. We'll get back.